Imagine this. You're working on a construction project and accidentally damage a client's property. Without insurance, you could be held responsible for the repair costs. And what about the unforeseen accidents that can happen on a job site? Construction projects come with their fair share of risks. If a third party gets injured, you could be facing medical expenses, legal fees, or even potential settlements. But with construction liability insurance, those expenses are covered, saving you from a significant financial burden. So, if you're a general contractor, renovation expert, or construction professional, don't leave your business vulnerable. Nail down the low-cost construction liability insurance you need and get a certificate of insurance quickly. And get a free quote now by visiting zensurance.com/save35. Zensurance is Canada's leading source for small business and construction liability insurance. Hello everyone, welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I am digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me I have
DCN and JOC editor Lindsey Cole.
And we're going to go over some of the news before we get to our main feature, which is Alex Carrick and Michael Guckes, our chief economist and senior economist, and they're going to talk about tech and construction. But before that, Lindsey is going to give us a deep dive, or at least a middling dive, on all the things that are happening on the JOC and DCN this week. So take it away, Lindsey. What are some of the big stories?
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll dive in head first, but not too deep. So first and foremost, we have a story from Don. It's kind of an interesting project that's going to be carried out. And it's pertaining to some shortlisted firms for a unique redevelopment at the Toronto Coach Terminal, which is located at 610 Bay Street and 130 Elizabeth Street. So it's kind of a unique redevelopment being proposed by Create TO. 16 teams originally participated in the request for expressions of interest. And then now we've got a number of top developers taking up the 7-team shortlist. So 7 guys, or developers, I should say, are vying to potentially be the winning proponent for this project. So it's a pretty notable building downtown. It opened in 1931. It's on the Heritage Registry, but now there's an idea to really completely transform it. So that, it could serve as a potential multi-hub for, let's say, life sciences or the biomedical centers. There's mixed-use high-rise being proposed. So it's a pretty cool project story where Create TO has outlined what we would like to potentially see for this site. And I guess we're going to carry it through and follow it forth to see who ends up, coming out on top and getting to potentially redevelop this. Obviously, some bigger developers have put their name forward. So I would suggest checking out the story to see who made the top 7 would be my suggestion there. Another cool story we got coming out this week is actually our kickoff to our prefabrication and modular construction feature. That's the theme this month for our feature series. Kind of a cool topic, obviously something that's very relevant to the industry right now, as modular seems to be picking up speed in terms of its use across the country. So this one in particular is by John Bleasby, and it talks about how, COVID-19 was seen as kind of like a proving ground for these modular builds. In particular, we've reported on it before, was Lakeridge Gardens in Ajax, Ontario. It's a long-term care facility. As a result of the pandemic, obviously there was a need to accelerate builds. So
of course,
of course. So the 6-story building in Ajax was able to be completely finished in 13 months, which is pretty remarkable actually for a long-term care facility. Given, I'm sure there's lots of parameters for consideration. So his story kind of outlines a little bit of that build, but it also merges into just the popularity of modular construction, what some people are considering, some other builds in the US, and a report that kind of highlights its trajectory. So pretty cool feature kickoff piece on where modular construction is and where it kind of almost became popular and where it's going. So that's a good one. When it comes to the western side of things, we have a couple things on the go. One of the things we are following fairly steadfastly, I suppose, is there is a strike that's taking place with port workers. Um,
There's tons of
yeah, which
knock-on
is
effects for that, or there will be anyway. There aren't yet,
mm,
but there will be.
yeah, I guess over the weekend, over the long weekend, talks didn't go very well. So there's 7,000 workers who unload and unload cargo
Hmm.
at more than 30 BC ports. So they've been on strike since Saturday. So um, it's between the BC Maritime Employers Association and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union of Canada. They're the ones that are in talks, and it doesn't seem to be going well right now. So we'll have to see where things land in terms of an agreement if one gets reached. But it's certainly something we're following because, as we all know, the supply chain is already impacted and has already been impacted by the
Hmm.
pandemic or climate events or you name it. So we need to just kind of keep an eye on it to see where this goes and what will be impacted when it comes to construction. So have an eye for that. Uh, the other thing that we wanted to highlight from the Western side of things that Evan attended recently um, was an event where the British Columbia Institute of Technology's new associate certificate in construction of mass timber structures um, course was highlighted. So we've reported on this before, but
Hmm. I think I
it's a
did specifically.
I
Yeah.
think you did, yeah. So this is the first cohort. So this actual program launched in January, but these guys are now wrapping up their curriculum, I guess, for lack of a better term. And they wanted to showcase it. So Evan was able to attend an event and see what they have been working on and what they've been doing, get some feedback on how effective the program's been. So there's been, he interviewed a superintendent with Leadcore that talked about how, because mass timber, again, modular, but modular components, but mass timber components, it's
Hmm.
becoming, especially out west, obviously,
Oh yeah,
um,
especially BC for sure, because we've got the
especially BC.
materials here for it, right? So
So this particular superintendent was really, singing its praises, saying it's really important that you get your skill set upgraded, or you know, if you want to specialize in that, you can. There's just so many facets to it. It's important to know the fundamentals, and this has been a really effective program. So it was cool that we were invited to that, and Evan got some good insight as to the effectiveness of the program. So. And I thought I
yeah.
would probably, yeah, I thought I would end on a economic note, given that we have some of our Construct Connect economists speaking later in this podcast. But there's been a report that came out from Linesight, um, who has an office in Vancouver, and they released a forecast, I guess is the proper term, on where they see, the year ahead in 2024 in terms of the construction sector. Was interesting, the findings. So it they state that there'll be a slight contraction in the construction industry this year because of a
Mhm.
decline in residential building, which I don't think comes as not much of a shock. But
No.
um, the ICI sector is the ray of light here, along with energy and utilities and infrastructure. They're anticipated to be busier this year and in 2024. So that's actually pretty cool, especially for our listeners and our readership. There's a lot of optimistic outlooks when it comes to certain projects in the ICI industry. They even say supply chain issues are easing. We'll see how that goes
Mhm.
with the strike in
Well,
BC,
yeah, we'll
but
see.
just to
They
link
said
it
that.
back there.
They didn't
Um,
really know at the time that this was going to happen,
no.
so to be fair.
Um, prices for materials are becoming more stable, they state. So we'll have to see where things lie. But that it was an interesting report I felt when I was reading the story. Um, they state that Canada is expected to contract by 0.9% in 2023 because of the residential, but the ICI will help to offset that decline
Mhm.
with 76 billion in output in 2023 and 80 in 2024, 80 billion, I should say. So a fairly I don't know, rosy picture, if you will, given, I mean, I'm going to put a caveat on that, given the
Right.
past few years.
Mhm.
But it's certainly something worth checking out when when you get a chance to see the story. And with that, that's our main news hooks for this week
Yep.
until we speak again, potentially, Warren.
And
But those are the main highlights for you.
all those will be in our show notes, links to these stories that we've just discussed. But up next, here come Alex Carrick and Michael Guckes, and they're going to discuss technology and construction. And we're here for another semi-regular check-in about the economy, and this time we're going to talk about technology. Specifically, I see a lot of things about how construction technology firms are being invested in and how technology construction is revolutionizing the field, and that may all very well be true, but I want to talk to the guys who actually see the numbers to back this up or not. So I guess I'd start with, have you seen more investment in construction technology firms, and what's the end result of that?
Yeah. Well, the problem is I'm not really an authority on this. It's funny because I'll speak to groups and
Mhm.
I still will hear people saying that they're not sure about this whole idea about going modular and so on. Now, there's no question that everybody is getting more into technology, and you can't help it. I mean, it's happening, and you don't even realize that it's happening. You're having to spend money on computer systems and new equipment,
Mhm.
and your accounting is taking place in a back room somewhere else. It might not even be in the country that you're in, and you're adopting BIM technology and so on. So it's happening, and then there's other forms like modular and so on. As we get into this further, maybe I can contribute more
Mhm.
about what we're saying. But what I will say that I find interesting is that there's other aspects to high tech that are really important for construction. Like construction's notorious for not having the productivity increases that it
Mhm.
should be
Mhm.
having, that it's really low on the list of sectors that are having strong productivity increases. But high tech is making a huge impact on the industry in other ways. In terms of the stock market, for example, it's giving a boost to stock market prices. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are in bull territory. And the reason that they're in bull territory is, which is a gain of 20% from recent low, is because investors have suddenly decide they're having a love affair with the high tech firms, and particularly
Mhm.
ones that are strong in artificial intelligence, which is a subject I could get into because I'm not sure what artificial intelligence is. But
You and me both.
yeah, like to me, artificial intelligence is, a computer goes off and calculates something and calculates how to improve what it's calculated without human input. And I think a lot of what's being considered artificial intelligence is really man directing computers in a certain way. But anyway, there's five or so companies that are now $1 trillion companies, and one of the ones that's moved up there is NVIDIA, which has a GPU computer chip that is used in artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
And Tesla at one point was a $1 trillion company, but the others are Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, so on. So that's good for stock markets. And then for construction, it's the building of chip plants, computer chip plants, and it's battery plants, and it's recharging stations and so on. And all those sources of construction activity are based on high-tech developments.
Mhm.
So if you're struggling with the impact of high tech, you can look beyond just how it impacts construction processes to this other side of things, which is that it's a stimulus for an awful lot of the construction activity that's taking place right now.
Let me add to that, Warren, that
Mhm.
when we think about construction technologies, the time for really implementing those is now. When we look at labor, right, construction labor is rising on an annualized basis at 5% plus, and it's been like that since the beginning of 2020. We don't see that situation changing because we've seen an exodus of workers, of older workers. Those, I believe it's in the 50 plus category. They have left the labor force and they have shrunk the amount of excess labor in the market. And so we've really never seen the labor market so tight right now. And again, that is why I think in part we're seeing these strong wage increases, because that's a structural problem. It needs a structural solution. There is no silver bullet to that problem, but technology probably is the best one that we have to address it. So things like computer tools or labor-saving tools for takeoff and estimating, for creating digital twins of construction projects, et cetera, things that will help to reduce rework, mistakes, et cetera, and in essence will allow every unit of labor to be maximally productive. That is really going to be what technology brings to the construction industry moving forward, I think. And why technology in the construction place is it's so important. And it's a good thing that we're having discussions like this now, because business leaders, construction firm leaders need to be thinking about how will they be using technology to bring down their costs of construction as labor becomes ever more expensive.
Now, Alex, you mentioned AI, and AI is kind of the newest buzzword. And as a cynical journalist, I usually assume that if I hear a buzzword, that I should distrust it. but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe you could explain. And also, construction seems to be, I wouldn't say it's immune to the hype cycle, but it sure doesn't happen as much as it does, say, high tech. So with AI sort of in construction, what are you seeing in terms of that being something people are just putting on the end of a name to sort of juice up investment, or actually is it making an impact?
AI, it's one of those things that sounds great, and I have no doubt that it's something that's going to be very important. You see, I follow construction volume levels in terms of what's going on behind the scenes. That again, I really. That's not something that I really know. All I know is that the companies themselves talk about how important it is to get into things like virtual reality and Oculus headsets and so on, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to spot problems before they happen, and they're trying to, as Michael says, it's change orders that are the things that affect costs more than anything. And right now there's this tremendous number of mega projects out there. So as to there's podcasts that specifically are tuned to exactly what is happening in technology, but the industry can't ignore this. Like executives in the industry, you hear them, and some of them still are backwards. Like they're not that willing to embrace some of these things, because they argue amongst themselves as to whether it really is having an effect and whether it does really save money, because it's expensive to set up some of these processes and so on. But they can't be doing that. Like I just don't. I intuitively, I just know that they can't be doing it. And one of the reasons is certainly on the labor side, because the competition for labor is just going through the roof. It's and construction is notorious for having this problem about how do you get young people to go into a field and work, and the way around that is modular and so on. But just think about the other jobs that are out there that didn't used to be out there. Like when you were growing up, construction was something that you did think about maybe going into, because there weren't these other opportunities. And It's in a whole bunch of areas, and it's in technology, it's in computer sciences, it's in all those categories of work called STEM jobs. But it's not just those. I think about the entertainment industry. I've sort of got a bugbear about the entertainment industry and just how big it has become worldwide. And it's become even bigger during the pandemic because everybody wanted to download shows and videos and so on. And my own children and their friends, I just know a bunch of kids, and not kids, they're young adults, who are working on film projects, or who are doing things like doing the computer graphics, CGI work for these superhero movies, and writing music, and actually going as grips or best boys or working cameras, lighting engineers, boom operators,
All of which are skilled trades.
Yeah,
Carpenters,
carpenters building sets at movie productions. And that was something that used to be only done in Hollywood, but because of the proliferation of entertainment, it's being done in major cities all over the place. So that's siphoning off workers who maybe before would have gone into construction. And there's many other examples of opportunities that just didn't exist before, as opposed to working on construction sites. So it's a problem. So companies, whether they like it or not, contractors, subcontractors, and design people and so on, wherever they can, the answer to higher wages, the answer to labor shortages has always been automation. And that's where it's going to have to happen. And anybody who can come up with imaginative ways to increase automation in construction and streamline processes and design and make things happen faster is going to win kudos from their bosses.
You know what Alex is saying parlays very much so with what I was telling people at the AIA 23 conference in San Francisco just a few weeks back, where we were talking to architects about, well, what does the future shape of the labor force in construction mean for how you need to think about building projects or designing projects as an architect? And one of the things that it comes down to is really a result of what Alex said. We need to be designing buildings that use more labor efficient products. Now that might, for example, mean pre-assembled products, simply products that can be joined or fastened more quickly or with less complications, things of that nature. And we see those technology advances all the time in electric and plumbing and other fields where we, have tools and resources that allow things to be done much faster with less labor. So that's a big part of it. Now that's again on the technology side, but I think Alec also made some great points about culturally speaking. We need more people like Mike Rowe, the guy from Dirty Jobs, coming out and pointing out that culturally speaking, just like Alex said, we have enticed our young people into essentially the entertainment industry, whether they are grips or something like a YouTube influencer. That seems to be catching everybody's attention, but that's not necessarily where we need people to be. One of the things that I tend to point people to when we talk about this is simply the labor force participation rate, and it is lower than it has been in a long time, and the trend downwards in the participation rate is decades old now. It's very concerning, and I think again it points to what are these people doing? You know, young people, middle-aged people, what are they doing that they're not participating in the labor force? And how do we fix that? Because we can't have a growing economies where we're starved of labor. It's an essential input to any economic growth. So there are, I think, some underlying cultural issues across North America, I would imagine, that need to be addressed at a very high level. But in the meantime, like Alec was saying, right, there are technological solutions that may serve as a stopgap for a while.
I can tell you anecdotally that there are construction influencers too, because I saw some at ConExpo. But anyway, one thing I was thinking while we were talking about this is that it reminds me of, let's say 15 years ago when green building was kind of still up for grabs. It was up for debate whether people were going to do it or not. And it seems like that is an argument that has been settled. Like that's what we are doing. But that we seems like we're at that 15 years back point with technology here, where it's like, is this happening? Isn't it happening? And what do you think? Like 15, 20 years down the road, obviously you guys can't predict the future, although economists, if anybody can. but
Yeah.
do you think that, are we at that same sort of point with AI and technology adoption that we were with green building?
Yeah, you know what, though? You've just raised a couple of really interesting points. There's a huge tie-in between high tech and sustainability. Like an awful lot of the effort to achieve sustainability relies on high tech. Like I think anybody would conclude that solar panels, they exist because somebody's come up with a way to convert sunlight into electric power. And almost anything that you talk about in terms of sustainability has a high-tech influence. And the construction companies themselves certainly are into the whole subject of high tech. And it's the building product manufacturers as much as anybody. You can't buy anything anymore that doesn't have a message on it about how it saves on carbon emissions and so on. And the way that they're doing it is basically through high tech. But I will also say that the question that you've asked about what I'm seeing about specifically AI adoption, well, the way that one used to find out about that sort of thing was to go to trade shows and see what people are doing, because otherwise you're just listening to contractors and clients and so on. And you know, the role that I have as an economist, I talk to some clients and I certainly talk to groups of contractors, but trade shows is where you sort of see where the companies first introduce what they're doing on the software side and so on. And with the pandemic, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to trade shows. So right. Michael is, and you are, Warren, and you're more likely to see what's happening than I am. It's not that I wouldn't go to a trade show. I just haven't been because I'm used to doing everything through Zoom. Now, there alone is an example of high tech that has enabled us to carry on work. So things like Zoom and a whole range of other things are implementations of high tech that were taken for granted now. So it's happening. It's happening at an incredible pace, and it's going to keep happening. And you got these people who are out there saying that they're not so sure that AI should be. We should be going gung-ho with AI. Well, good luck trying to stop it. It'll be very hard trying to put a hold on it.
Michael, what do you think?
I think I pretty much said everything I have to say regarding AI. You know, it's a necessary opportunity. Those firms, as Alec pointed out, those firms that are young enough in spirit and have the ambition to go after it, you know, they may find themselves in a truly competitive advantage position, you know, if it should pan out for them. So for certain, it's something that the industry needs to be looking at very carefully, and I think with long-term strategy in mind.
Okay, that seems like as good a place as any to end it. Thanks again for joining me, guys, and I'll see you probably next month. And that's it for this episode of the Construction Record Podcast. You can listen to us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, and on the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce websites. And if you'd like to check out any of the stories in our news segment, we'll have links in the show notes. Thanks for listening.